Welcome to UNCAGED, a show that celebrates thought leadership from today's top business leaders. The program provides a voice to amazing executives from around the globe who are shaping the world of business today and mapping the path to the commerce of tomorrow. Today, we're speaking with Philip Pirecki. Philip, how are you?
I'm good, Brent. How are you?
I'm very, very well. I've got a couple things to talk to Philip about today. Philip is involved in a whole bunch of really interesting companies, really touching on the finance, I'd say alternative investment space, rethinking finance, rethinking investment. And we're going to talk about that with the backdrop of some of the businesses that he's involved in. One is Jersey Finance. Jersey Finance is a company that basically focuses on promoting Jersey as a gateway to Europe for U.S. fund managers. And we'll talk about all of the things that are happening in not the New Jersey, but the old Jersey, the Jersey in England. And then we're also going to talk about a really interesting group, which is the Fable Group, Fable Homes, Fable Capital. And they're aiming to be a leading provider of home ownership solutions to overcome the barriers that first-time buyers face when transitioning from renter to buyer, which, as anyone who's followed the news over the last couple of years has seen, become a really big issue, generational issue. And so we'll delve into that as well. But before we get there, Philip, tell us a little bit about yourself and your career.
Sure, Brent. Thanks. Well, I'll start off with Jersey. So despite the accent, I'm from Jersey originally.
Wow.
Not the old one. I'd like to call it the original one. It's an entirely interesting story on how the state of New Jersey got its name for a different day entirely. But I ended up in the States when I was still a kid. I spent time in the Marine Corps. I went to, after university, I worked in consulting, investment banking, asset management in terms of running hedge fund, boutique M&A business. And my career sort of took me through this sort of arc in finance to where I am now. I'm still a fairly active investor. That's how I got involved in Fable Homes. And I've taken on the business directorship lead in the Americas for Jersey Finance, sort of championing Jersey as a jurisdiction in the Americas.
I mean, Jersey's really interesting. Let's maybe go there first before we go into the Fable stuff. I mean, I remember Jersey when I lived in England as being a place where a lot of the early digital players actually got very involved in Jersey for really kind of data issues, as well as for obviously tax benefits. So tell me a little bit more on how people are using your solutions for Jersey Finance.
Well, I'll look at Jersey really from the U.S. context. So you are right. Jersey has been leading in a number of these areas. But if I'm looking from the U.S. perspective, it's a proposition to U.S. investment managers writ large. So if you're in hedge or private equity, just call it the alternative space generally. If you are raising capital in Europe, Jersey should be on the table as a vector for Europe for all sorts of important reasons that I don't really want to, go into ad nauseum here on the call or on the show. But Jersey really represents a gateway to European capital, and it's found itself as an international financial center at the right place at the right time. If you look at the evolution of offshore finance centers, they've all served a purpose, and they've sort of been built around a proposition that is relevant to its time. And Jersey's proposition is about being predictable and stable in the current environment, which is saying something because we're seeing extraordinary levels of volatility. And I mean that in terms of regulatory volatility and tax volatility and all of these things. So the value of a jurisdiction that is stable and predictable is quite remarkable. And that's where Jersey is at the moment.
So, I mean, are you alluding to obviously things like Brexit and, all the changes there? Or, I mean, even more more recent as we look at kind of the increasing tax liabilities across Europe. When you say they're in the right place at the right time, what is it because of those issues or others?
Well, Jersey's always been a third country to Europe, so it's a crown dependency. So it's actually a separate country than the United Kingdom, and it shares the same monarch. So the king is also has another title called the Duke of Normandy, which is the head of state of Jersey. So it was never part of the European Union. So when Brexit happened, Jersey was independent of that schism. And its relationships with Europe are always have been member to member state relationships. Those bilateral relationships remained in place. They were there prior to Brexit, and they remain in place post-Brexit.
Oh, great. I see what you're saying. So then maybe leveraging off of those existing relationships allows maybe better connections, I suppose.
Well, it means that you can still roll. So the predictability is there. So, Britain's going through its process now. The United Kingdom is going through this process now of continually negotiating various points of financial service regulation. There's a laundry list of these points that are being negotiated, many being sort of kicked down the can kicked down the road kind of idea, whereas Jersey doesn't. These are already established. So Brexit hasn't had that impact on Jersey. Plus, Jersey's relationship with the United Kingdom, those have remained in place as well.
That's really interesting. Well, I mean, I think that we're living in, I'd say, fluid moments, fluid times. And so I think that predictability is really the critical distinguishing factor here. Whenever I pick up a new news story, it's about Europe. It's some big change. And so the fact that I hear that Jersey's kind of continuing with its path, that's very helpful. But with your other business, Fable Homes and Fable Capital, this other business that you're involved with, this is about a real big change we're seeing, right? And this is something a bigger topic that you guys are handling. Tell me a little bit about how you got involved with this topic and really where you see the impact being.
Well, how I got involved, I mentioned I'm still an active investor. This was a proposition that came across my desk, if you want to call it that, as you see a lot of opportunities, and it resonated with me. So, I do, I have a sort of a personal connection to an issue of housing, to put it, lightly. When I said I ended up in the States as a kid, this was after a year of being on the run with my father and my sister in tow because he had kidnapped us, and we were homeless for a while. I know the value of stability in a place to live, and it doesn't leave you that sense of needing a place to call home, that sense of intellectual and emotional stability that a home gives you. And so I just couldn't stop delving into the idea. And then I realized that actually what Fable was trying to solve was a multi-generational problem. Because if you looked at the delta between what the pathway to home ownership in previous generations and where we are today, it's widened. Now, each market is different. So I can speak about the UK market in particular and the problem we're trying to solve, which really is a problem of having enough deposit, in British terms or in American terms, a down payment on a home. Right. Saving for that down payment now is taking longer and longer and longer. And you're renting during that period of time, which means you're not growing your own asset base, right? So this is a solution that Fable brought to the table, and we're in the process of rolling out now, is actually solving for first-time home buyers this deposit issue. We get you into the home faster, and therefore it's your home. You're participating in the home's appreciation over time. And I'll leave one point on this that's really, kind of it's a very important social point to highlight, which is that this is typically the most important asset that people have in their lives. And yes, it's true. If you're coming from a very wealthy position, perhaps home ownership is optionality for you, or it's one of many, and it doesn't seem as important. But for the vast majority of people, that asset is the most important asset, particularly as they get older, because it's the asset they can draw from for all sorts of reasons. There's a phrase, I think it's called Bank of Mom and Dad, or Mom and Dad, BOMAD. And if you can see what people take from equity in their homes in order to either pay for their children's education, pay for down deposits in their children's homes, et cetera, that's coming out of this most important asset. And it tells you why that asset is so important generationally. And now you have a generation of younger people that aren't even on the property ladder. And I think it was Ian Y that coined the phrase generation rent, that this is a ticking time bomb for a society as we go down the road. And it's almost like we're sort of sleepwalking into another Victorian age of where you're going to have huge classes of people that don't have any assets to their name to draw on when they get older.
Now, it's really interesting, and I look at the challenges. Certainly, we see Generation Y face these major societal shifts and really staying renters much longer. So anything that can support them to move to being an owner, as you alluded to before, home ownership is such a foundational move, in terms of building up kind of that next stage of really joining the middle class, I suppose, or any class, right? And so it seems like anything that can support that area is really critical. Philip, you're working on a lot of interesting areas of finance, Jersey finance, Fable Homes. I mean, we've been living through this crazy moment over the last couple of years with a pandemic. Tell me a little bit of how these businesses that you're involved with were impacted by that moment, and what kind of opportunities are you seeing perhaps now to grow those businesses as we come out of it?
Oh, that's a big question.
Yeah.
I think I'll echo probably what a lot of people would say or have said, which is, I think the pandemic brought forward, accelerated all sorts of changes. And that's important. And it sounds like a throwaway comment, but it isn't. While bringing it forward, it wasn't just linear, like we've just moved this forward. It's concentrated things, and it's accelerated things. So there's an exponential component to that, which is really important. So on the Jersey finance side, so I'll go at sort of Jersey finance, then Fable. There is a relationship here. On the Jersey finance side, it's created an environment where regulators have become more politicized and less technocratic. I mean, these are still technical things, but allow me to describe it this way. I think we would have previously been in an environment where we were slowly transitioning from technocratic regulation towards more politicized regulation. But that technocratic regulation that we were sort of moving away from, the swing because of the pandemic and the social consequences because of those things have almost put technocratic regulation aside, and it's really politicized. And what I mean by that is no longer is regulation about capital efficiency with consumer protection. It's now about political activism, and which speaks to the body politic. So I think that is really a massive shift, because it's taken a pathway and brought it to the immediate. And that's why for Jersey, we've seen a significant rise in U.S. utilization of Jersey. And the argument really is that you need a place that you can plan, right? You can't sort of structure international cross-border transactions where every few months the pieces have to move around. It's too difficult to do that. So in order to keep cross-border capital flows moving, you need a place that's stable, that's predictable. And Jersey offers that. So I think that has been a big boost to Jersey. That on the Fable side, in the same experience, we've seen housing prices run away from that generation, while wages
run away from all of us, Philip. I mean,
that's true.
I live in Miami. I can't buy a house.
It's true. But speaking to the first-time home buyer, the first-time home buyer cohort, if you will, what would have been an 8-year really let's knuckle down and save for our deposit is now a 10-year, or in some cases 13-year, because wages have remained relatively flat while housing prices have moved way out of reach. So it's actually exacerbated the situation in first-time home buyers. And now, of course, we're moving into another situation where we've got rates going up. The number of variables are continuing to put pressure on the sector. And obviously, in an environment where rates are going up and prices are coming down, from a Fable perspective, because we are cash buyers of the home for the first-time home buyer, we have the pricing power and the ability to buy on their behalf. That makes a big difference in this marketplace. So again, also trying to solve other problems, again, for the same cohort of first-time home buyers. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does. It does. In fact, it's a spectacular answer. I would say that probably as we move into this new period with high inflation rates, et cetera, that adds a kind of another wrinkle to the whole story, right?
Well, this is I don't want to say that we're in sort of uncharted territory, but we are definitely moving into we are in a wildly inflationary period. We're also in a decoupling, a slowdown. There's an opinion whether this is the end of globalization or as we've known it, or a slowdown or a reimagining of it. Pick any one of those things. Whether it results in reshoring businesses back to places like the United Kingdom or in this, context of the United States, all of those processes are going to have impacts on wage rates, on labor. That's going to have an impact on demand. This is a really dynamic period of time that we're in. I'm fascinated by it. I don't think it changes whatsoever our mission at Fable.
Yeah.
We still believe, and our backers still believe as well, which is very encouraging, that we're the right product for the market. And we haven't seen anything yet that suggests otherwise. In fact, we go from strength to strength.
Yeah. No, I love it. Well, I mean, Philip, we've been talking about a lot of issues. I think ultimately it all will boil down to a first-time homeowner in Jersey needs both, and it'll all be a holistic solution.
Although we're not in the Jersey market.
Exactly. Oh, really?
No, we're in the United Kingdom only at the moment.
That's hilarious. Well, Philip, thanks so much for outlining these things. And we've been going through a ton of big issues, macro and micro here. What I love is to know where someone can reach you and the teams at Jersey Finance and Fable Homes to learn more.
Of course. I'm hoping you're going to put up a link somewhere here.
Yeah, do one of those. Do one of those.
Please. Yeah. Reach out to me if either of these things are of interest to you. I'm more than happy to talk about them at length. And please, if you can widely distribute my contact details, I'd love to connect with people.
Excellent. Well, Philip, thank you so much for being on UNCAGED Day. We've been speaking with Philip Pirecki. He's the Chief Operating Officer of Fable Homes. He's also lead at Jersey Finance. Fable Homes is a really interesting company that's trying to be and aiming to be the leading provider of home ownership solutions to overcome the barriers that first-time buyers face when transitioning from renter to buyer. And Jersey Finance is promoting Jersey as the gateway to Europe for U.S. fund managers. Both areas very, very important. Both areas really kind of taking an alternative and innovative look at how we can finance and manage risk. Philip, thank you so much for being on UNCAGED today, and we look forward to having you back.
Brent, thank you very much.